Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're looking into Daybridge. Seems like your average town, right?
Right.
But we're going to cover some hidden history, some surprising connections to the supernatural world.
It definitely piqued my interest.
Yeah, right. Our sources for this one are, well, they're kind of a mix. Yeah, we've got excerpts from like a fictional novel set in Daybridge, internal memos from something called the Paranormal Defense Unit, even meeting minutes from, town organizations. The usual.
Uh-huh.
But the goal here is, well, we want to understand how this place, Daybridge, functions. Like how is described as a supernatural ecosystem.
Right.
How do the people there deal with these, rising threats?
Yeah.
And then, thinking bigger picture, what lessons could this hold for the rest of us, outside of Daybridge?
It's intriguing, going through these sources, it really seems like the supernatural in Daybridge, it isn't just some external force. It's like deeply interwoven with the town's history, institutions, even their daily routines.
So it's not just about like ghosts and goblins popping up.
Yeah, I don't know.
But how the supernatural is just like baked into the very fabric of the town.
Exactly.
But that makes you wonder, how did it get this way?
Well, Daybridge, like many places with a strong connection to the supernatural, it's got a bit of a dark past. It was founded on these powerful ley lines.
Ley lines.
Yeah, essentially like a crossroads between worlds.
Oh, wow.
And, that history, it's still shaping the present. We see it everywhere.
Speaking of history, we can't talk about this without mentioning the Salem witch trials.
Of course, yeah.
1692. Even though it happened centuries ago, our fictional source, it really suggests the echoes of that event. They're still felt very strongly in Daybridge today. Like the injustice, the vengeful spirits, it's all very much alive.
And it goes even deeper than just Salem. There's mention of multiple attempts throughout history to control Daybridge's supernatural power.
Control it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, these attempts, they usually, they more often than not resulted in catastrophic events.
Like what? What kind of events?
Well, there's one specifically mentioned, the Caligari Cataclysm.
That sounds intense.
From 1892.
Wow, that's a name that definitely grabs your attention.
It does, doesn't it?
And it seems to be connected to this Bloodline Archive, which is described as a powerful grimoire.
A grimoire.
Created by the town's founders. It's meant to be both a weapon and a shield against supernatural threats.
That's interesting, having both.
Yeah, right. But what's really interesting is that apparently this archive, it was intentionally broken into pieces and hidden.
Hidden?
Yeah, entrusted to 7 guardian families. It's
Right.
like they knew it was too powerful to be kept whole.
It suggests a deliberate attempt to prevent the archive's power from being misused.
Maybe they didn't trust anyone with that much power.
Right, or maybe it's even a metaphor for how knowledge itself should be handled, distributed, carefully guarded.
But of course, there's always someone who wants to put that power back together, right? The fictional account mentions a modern-day coven. They're seeking to reassemble the archive.
A coven? What are their intentions?
It doesn't sound good. They seem unaware of the archive's true nature and the dangers it holds. It really makes you think about the responsibility that comes with seeking such powerful knowledge.
It certainly does. And speaking of responsibility, the sources really highlight this tension between knowledge and its application, particularly when we look at the Daybridge Paranormal Defense Unit, the PDU.
Ah, the PDU. They operate in secret, right? Protecting the town from supernatural threats while maintaining a facade of normalcy for everyone else.
It's a tough job.
Right. Like a supernatural version of those neighborhood watch groups.
Yeah.
Except way cooler.
Definitely cooler. And what I find fascinating is their approach. They blend ancient knowledge with modern technology, adapting traditional protections to contemporary challenges.
So they're not afraid to mix the old with the new.
Exactly. We even see evidence of them pushing back against federal oversight in one of the PDU memos on operational authority.
So they're not just fighting monsters, they're also fighting bureaucracy.
Apparently so.
I guess that's a battle we can all relate to. But what's their argument for keeping things local?
Well, the memo clearly states all supernatural incidents within Daybridge fall under their primary jurisdiction. Even federal agents have to report to PDU headquarters before conducting operations.
Wow. They're serious about their autonomy.
It's like they're saying, we know our town better than anyone, and we've got this.
I can respect that.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider how long Daybridge has been dealing with this stuff. They probably have a whole system in place that outsiders wouldn't understand.
Exactly. And it's not just the PDU that's adapting. The novel and meeting minutes show that Daybridge citizens are increasingly aware of the town's true nature. which has led to this rise in, well, let's call them protective measures. But they're disguised as everyday activities.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. I love the details in the novel. Homeowners incorporating ancient warding symbols into their homes, but disguised as colonial-era decorations.
Very clever.
The local coffee shop serving blessed honey as an artisanal sweetener.
Blending right in.
It's brilliant. It's like the whole town is participating in this secret, unspoken defense system.
It is. And we see it on a larger scale, too. Meeting minutes mention the business district undergoing historical renovations that actually reinforce supernatural defenses. Schools are implementing safety protocols that align with ancient protection rituals.
Wow.
It speaks to the resilience of the community, how they've come together to protect what's important, even if most of the world wouldn't understand the threat.
It's like they've turned their whole way of life into a defense mechanism.
In a way, yes. They've adapted to the extraordinary without sacrificing the ordinary.
That's fascinating.
It's incredible, really, how Daybridge has created this layered defense system.
It's not just like walls and magic spells, though.
Right. It's so much more than that. They've woven protection into the essence of their community.
It's like they've turned the whole town into one big, living, breathing security system.
That's a great way to put it.
But it's not like, living in a bunker or something.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's also seamlessly integrated into daily life.
Exactly. Remember that neighborhood watch chapter in the novel?
Oh, yeah.
It perfectly illustrates this, what seems like a simple community meeting about, home security.
Right.
It's actually a cleverly coded gathering where they're learning about warding techniques, sharing information about supernatural threats.
Right. They're talking about protecting their homes from both burglars and the boogeyman.
Exactly.
And it's everywhere. Like the iron horseshoes on doors, the blessed honey in their coffee.
Right.
Even those historical renovations are actually reinforcing supernatural defenses.
It's brilliant.
Blending the magical and the mundane so well that an outsider would never suspect a thing.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how many towns have these hidden layers of protection that, we just don't see.
Right. Like, what if it's more common than we think?
It's a fascinating thought. But getting back to Daybridge, while they're clearly good at blending in, there are hints that they're also becoming more, assertive. Yeah, in defending their autonomy, especially against federal intervention. We see this in the PDU memo.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of we know best coming from the PDU.
Isn't there?
They even cite legal precedents like the 1892 Supernatural Home Rule Act.
Right.
To back up their claim as the primary authority on supernatural matters within Daybridge.
It's clear they're not afraid to push back against the DSS.
The Department of Supernatural Security.
Yeah. And honestly, they have a point. Our sources consistently highlight the effectiveness of Daybridge's localized approach. They've achieved a remarkable level of stability and safety, even with all these supernatural threats, swirling around.
That makes me think about the global implications. What if Daybridge's success inspires other towns to declare their own supernatural sovereignty?
Interesting question.
Could that lead to chaos?
Or
could it lead to a more decentralized, adaptable system for handling these kinds of threats?
It's definitely a question worth considering, especially as we learn more about the specific threats Daybridge faces. But even within their, tight-knit community, it's not all smooth sailing.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, the novel hints at a growing tension between those who want to preserve the old ways,
Traditionalists.
and those who are pushing for more modern solutions. Remember that town meeting scene?
Oh, yeah, where some residents want to resurrect the Society of the Silvergate.
Right.
While others are advocating for tech solutions like citywide iron and silver networks. Talk about a clash of ideologies.
It really highlights the dilemma facing Daybridge, and maybe even humanity as a whole.
Like his.
How to balance tradition and innovation in the face of an evolving supernatural landscape.
It's a dilemma that runs through all our sources, isn't it? The PDU is a perfect example.
Blending ancient knowledge with modern technology.
Exactly. And even Nadia's journey as the town chronicler. She's drawing on the wisdom of her ancestors, but she's also having to develop new tools, new strategies to deal with the present.
It makes you think that Daybridge's survival might depend on finding that balance, embracing both the wisdom of the past and the possibilities of the future.
So they can't just cling to tradition.
No, they need to evolve to create a new kind of tradition, one that's rooted in history but open to adaptation.
Speaking of evolution, The sources suggest that Daybridge's unique approach, it's attracting international attention.
Absolutely. There's that chapter about international concerns, where we see representatives from, supernatural agencies around the world coming to Daybridge.
Like a field trip.
In a way, yes. They're clearly trying to figure out how the town has managed to integrate the supernatural into their society so effectively.
So they're a model for how to live in a world where the supernatural is no longer hidden.
It seems that way.
And there's that mention of the heritage protocol they're proposing.
Right, the heritage protocol.
It sounds like a pretty bold attempt to create a global framework, one that respects local autonomy while still promoting cooperation.
It's a fascinating development. It speaks to a growing recognition that standardized responses might not be the best way to deal with, the diverse range of supernatural phenomena around the world.
Trying to apply a one-size-fits-all solution to something as complex as the supernatural.
Right.
That's like, I don't know, trying to use a hammer to fix a computer. It's just not going to work.
It's the wrong tool for the job.
Each community, each supernatural ecosystem is unique.
And trying to impose some rigid structure, it could be disastrous.
We see this very clearly in Lila's journey to Prague in the novel.
Oh yes, Lila's story.
She's desperately seeking a way to break free from this dark magic that's, bound to her.
Right.
And what she realizes is that the solution isn't some universal magic spell or potion or whatever.
It's much more personal than that.
It lies in understanding her own personal history, her unique connection to the supernatural world.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a community like Daybridge, where there's this shared understanding of the supernatural, each individual's experience is still going to be unique.
So there's no easy answer, no quick fix.
It seems not. And you can't forget the role family legacies play in all of this.
Oh, right, the legacies.
That's Nadia and Ethan are wrestling with that. Ethan's trying to come to terms with his werewolf nature.
Tough inheritance.
While Nadia's uncovering her family's long history of protecting Daybridge.
Wow, so they're both carrying the weight of their family's past.
It's as if the past is reaching out, shaping the present, and urging them to embrace their roles as guardians.
Like a call to action echoing down through generations, pushing them to step up and fulfill their destinies.
And it's not just individuals. We see entire families grappling with these legacies.
Like who?
Well, think about the Payne family. The architect who's struggling to balance his, modern approach with his grandfather's teachings on defensive architecture.
All right, the Paynes.
It's a perfect example of how these ancient traditions are being tested and adapted for a new era. And then there's that school board meeting.
Don't even get me started on the school board meeting. They're literally incorporating supernatural defenses into the school's infrastructure.
They are. Talk about protect the children to a whole new level.
Seriously.
It's incredible to see how they're weaving this into everyday routines and institutions. They're not just reacting to threats. They're proactively building a more resilient community. One where the supernatural is acknowledged, addressed, but not allowed to dominate or disrupt their lives.
It's like they're saying, this is our reality, and we're going to find a way to live with it. We're going to protect ourselves and our children without letting fear control our lives.
That's a powerful message.
It really is. And it goes way beyond the fictional world of Daybridge. It's something we can all learn from.
It certainly is. And as we continue to delve deeper into these sources, it makes you wonder, if Daybridge is succeeding in this integration, are there others who are struggling?
Oh, good point.
Are there communities out there failing to adapt, being overwhelmed by this rising tide of supernatural activity?
Now, those are questions worth considering. And speaking of serious consideration, I think it's time we took a closer look at the specific threats that Daybridge is facing.
I agree. The novel hints at a dark force trying to break through the barriers between worlds. And the PDU report suggests this force is growing stronger, that the town's defenses might not be enough to hold it back. We'll explore these threats and the potential consequences in our next segment. Thinking about these threats, it's not just about external forces trying to break into Daybridge. The sources, they also point to danger from within, like corruption, people trying to exploit the town's power for their own gain.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We see that in the novel with that coven.
Exactly.
Trying to, misuse the Bloodline Archive. They seem so focused on acquiring power, they don't even consider the consequences.
It's a dangerous kind of ambition.
Makes you wonder, are they, intentionally malicious or just dangerously naive?
It's hard to say. But the novel hints at something even deeper, something more insidious at play. It's referred to as the Void.
The Void.
Yeah, and it seems to be this, like, primordial entity that hungers for our world. The Coven's actions, even if unintentional, they're weakening the barriers that protect Daybridge, essentially playing right into the Void's hands.
Oh, wow. So they're like pawns in this much larger, more dangerous game.
It seems that way.
And it's not just the Coven causing problems, right? We see hints of corruption in the town itself.
Definitely. The PDU memo, it mentions internal conflicts, the need to clarify jurisdictional boundaries. Like, not everyone in Daybridge is on the same page.
So even with all this shared history, shared knowledge, there are still those tempted to exploit the situation for personal gain.
It's a reminder that human nature, it doesn't change, even in a town like Daybridge.
It makes the role of people like Ethan, Alice, and Lila even more crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
They're not just fighting external threats.
Yeah.
They're trying to hold the line against this, like, internal corruption.
Yeah. They're the ones making sure Daybridge's defenses remain strong, that the town's power, it's used responsibly. And we can't forget Nadia, working tirelessly to uncover the truth about Daybridge's history.
Yeah, Nadia.
Trying to understand the nature of the threat, find a way to counter it. It's like her role as chronicler, it's evolved into something much more proactive.
Almost like a strategist in this supernatural conflict.
Exactly. Using her knowledge to anticipate threats, identify vulnerabilities, guide the town's defenders.
You wouldn't think a historian would be on the front lines, but in Daybridge it seems essential.
Knowledge is power. And in Daybridge, that's especially true. She's holding a crucial piece of the puzzle. And the novel suggests this knowledge, it might be connected to the Daughters, the Dark Moon. This ancient coven, they seem to have played a key role in shaping Daybridge's defenses.
So they left behind a legacy of protection.
That's interesting. It seems they created a network of wards and safeguards, things that have kept Daybridge safe for centuries. But as threats evolve, so too must the town's defenses. Nadia and Alice, their attempt to reform the coven, to tap into that ancient power, adapt it for a new era. Well, it could be Daybridge's best hope for survival.
So it's about finding that balance, continuity and innovation, respecting the wisdom of the past but finding new ways to apply it in the present.
Exactly. And it's not just happening in Daybridge. The sources, they suggest this struggle, this balancing act, it's playing out on a global scale. Communities around the world, they're facing these rising supernatural threats, and they're having to find their own ways to adapt.
Right, like we were talking about before with the idea of supernatural sovereignty.
Exactly. The PDU, their underground command center, where they're monitoring supernatural activity worldwide, exchanging information with other agencies. It really highlights that interconnectedness.
It does feel like a global awakening. Like the veil between worlds is thinning, and the supernatural is becoming impossible to ignore. Makes you wonder, how's humanity going to respond?
It's the big question, isn't it?
Will we, embrace these changes? Or try to cling to a world where magic doesn't exist?
It's a choice every community, every individual will have to make. And the consequences of that choice, well, they're going to be significant.
Daybridge has made its choice. They're facing the supernatural head-on, finding ways to integrate it into their lives, their community.
And they're not shying away from the challenges?
No, they're not. And while it's not, without its challenges, they seem to be succeeding, creating a world where the magical and the mundane can coexist. It's pretty inspiring when you think about it. What can we, the rest of us, learn from Daybridge?
Well, their success could offer valuable lessons for other communities, trying to find their own way in this changing world. The Heritage Protocol, for example. It's a bold attempt to create a framework for global cooperation while respecting local autonomy.
It's a recognition that there's no one-size-fits-all solution to the supernatural. Each community has to find what works for them. What an incredible deep dive this has been. Daybridge, it's so much more than meets the eye. A place where the past and present are intertwined, where the boundaries between worlds are, blurring, and where the fight for survival is both personal and global.
It's a story that's still unfolding.
It really is. And it teaches us some valuable lessons about resilience, adaptation, and the power of community. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
And remember, even in a world where darkness seems to be gaining ground, there are always those who stand against the shadows. And often, the strongest defenses are the ones we build together.